Hi, welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. This is season 11, episode 15. And this one is going to be about the contagion of aberration, both in the home and in society. I'm here with Quentin Stroud. Quentin, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic.
Good. Me too. We're
Good.
going to we're going to uh, dive right into this. What is a contagion of aberration from an independent Scientology standpoint?
So, definitely understanding that when there is aberration about, right, in the people that are around you, in situations around you, that aberration can shift over or can be infected, is how LRH calls it. It can infect someone else. And so, when we talk about charity begins at home, it really is a beautiful way of saying don't fuck up your kids. like
Yeah.
how many times have we perhaps allowed some of that contagion to rub off or to affect those around us or be affected by that kind of contagion, by that
Hmm.
kind of aberration.
Hmm.
And so we have to be very careful of that, and why this is the kind of space, as independent Scientologists, we want to foster a space that kind of breaks that cycle.
Hmm. Well, and it's also important to note that there are lots of defining factors on how this happens, both in society and well, what the original podcast title was charity begins at home, and what you what you teach your kids, what you do with your kids is what they learn from as an example. And this carries over to friends, it carries over to relationships, and the big A word, agreement, is what causes this, because if you make something okay, then people will follow suit, and especially if you're an opinion leader. So that's important, is you need to lead by example.
Right. And what who are our first opinion leaders? But our parents, right? Who are our first opinion leaders? But the people who we look up to or we look to around us. And even as we get older, then it becomes our friends, right? Our friends become the opinion leaders because we care about what they think, of course. And so all of these things matter. LRH says here in Dianetics, Contagion of Aberration, he says the mechanisms are simple. People under stress, if aberrated, dramatize engrams. Such dramatization may involve the injury of another person and render him more or less unconscious. The unconscious person then receives as an engram the dramatization, right? And so, I mean, quite simply, it says here that that the parent, how's it? The parent that can infect their child with engrams. Aberrated parents are certain to affect their child with engrams. And so we have to be mindful of the things that, as we're going through life, are are you being yourself, or are you dramatizing somebody else's dramatization,
Right.
somebody else's engram, somebody else's stuff, right? How many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, you look just like your mama. You sound just like your mama. You sound just like your daddy." Da 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 da. Right? And it's something that we could continue to dramatize over and over and over again, not even aware of it,
Hmm.
not even aware of it, below
Hmm.
our conscious level of awareness. And this then becomes um, what we would consider our personality. That's just the way it is. Just the way I am. That kind of thing. It's
Right.
not.
Right. And that follows the LRH datum of that a person takes on the weaker valence, especially in a family unit, because it gets the most attention. So they're going to take
Mm-hmm.
on those things that they see are successful in getting attention, which is a really slippery slope. And that
Mm-hmm.
is, that's part of that leading by example type of a thing. And that's why it's important to uh, you know, I mean, in a perfect sense, get auditing and fix these things that are affecting you that then have a domino effect on your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, that type of a thing, because this stuff echoes down through the generations.
And anybody around you. Like, I mean, a society. You could be dramatizing the aberration of a society, of a culture, of a people, of a community, right? Look at New York. If you go to New York City, if you go to certain parts of the world, like you can see people dramatizing even in the way they speak, even the way they talk to you, you can
Mm-hmm.
see them dramatizing something. It's like, what did I do to you? you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's like, listen, I'm not even mad,
yeah.
but the way you're coming at me, it sounds like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you have these mannerisms of the different boroughs in New York and the way that they behave, whether you're in the Bronx or you're in Queens or you're in New Jersey, they have these particular accents
Yep.
and behaviors and mannerisms. Are you talking to me? Are you
Right.
talking to me? That kind of attitude type of a thing, because that's what you have to have to survive in that particular area. And that is
Hmm.
a prime example of, I mean, the aggressiveness in order to survive, because if you don't respond that way, you're a sucker,
Mm.
and
And there's something.
yeah, you're weaker. So that's a prime example of contagion of aberration. And you see in social media these influencers, and that's a huge thing, because the issue is when you have somebody that is an influencer in modern day technology and society, they're influencing people for things they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Honestly.
And the priorities get mixed up, and especially when you're young and you're impressionable, you're going to go into agreement with this, and the kids see this on social media, and then they come home, and then now they're passing it on as a domino effect to their parents, that this is the thing, whether it's the latest lingo, the expressions of that generation, or it's what's acceptable. Here in South Africa, the parents come into a store and they buy edible marijuana gummies with their
Mm.
kids.
With the kids.
Yeah,
Right.
right. What kind of
Or
parent is
or or
that?
or or, or, or smoking and drinking it with the kids.
Right.
Hmm.
And that's a huge issue, is you need to lead by example, because if you don't, all you're doing is passing on this contagion of aberration. And that also comes down to, I mean, even hundreds of years later, people are still behaving like their forefathers many generations down. And people don't understand where that comes from, but it's there. It's part of the fabric of the way that their parents, their grandparents behave, the way that they do their ethics level, how they approach things with people, how they communicate, and all of this. And we're seeing this much more so because of the speed of technology. You can see anything across the planet in the blink of an eye if you have a decent internet connection or a cell connection. And
Right.
that's how these things get started. The what was it, the the washing machine detergent, where kids were drinking washing
Tide
machine
Pods. The Tide
Tide
Pods.
Tide Pods, and killing themselves because it was a trending thing. If that's not contagion of aberration, I don't know what is,
Yeah.
because
That's
somebody else
it
did
was
it. I saw it on TikTok.
yeah, it was insane.
Yeah. And then that
That's the only word for it.
right, right. And then that gets into media and all of that, and goes back to our podcast on the only way to control a person is to lie to them. But that's also a learned behavior in a contagion of aberration. What your kids learn at home, and the way that you're, again, going back to the original title of the podcast, charity begins at home, is when you have somebody who's in your family, you have to follow through, and you have to put in ethics and morals in order for them to be a decent person. And they're only the kids and the grandkids are only going to be as good as you are.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
that comes down to your tone scale, it comes down to your chart of human evaluation. And this is part of the reason why we see the dwindling spiral in society is because of these leading by bad examples.
Yeah, and I think that what I like to how I like to lay it out is um, you're not just looking at behaviors, right? We're not just talking about behaviors, because LRH talks about the four universes,
Mm-hmm.
and he talks about how each universe is its own, but it's also intimately acquainted or intimately connected with the next universe. So the first universe, of course, is the universe of spirit, right? You as a spiritual being. The first universe is spirit. The second universe is mind, right? The third universe is the physical body, and the fourth universe is the physical universe outside the body, right? And so when you see these behaviors and we recognize it and we just think that, oh, you're just misbehaving, right? You're just misbehaving. But it's not just misbehaving. So the kids go and get the edible gummies from the market thinking it's just candy and they just want to, whatever, with the parents. And we would think that, oh, it's just poor behavior. You're just making a poor choice by that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's not considered, and this is why I like to go deep because I'm a Pisces, we like to go deep into things. That physical universe item, the little gummy, right, can affect the body, affect the mind, and because they're all intimately connected, these universes affect the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not just talking about bad behavior when you're talking about, like, watching certain things on social media, or parents doing this or kids acting because they see their friends doing stuff. It's not just a behavioral issue. And I think that when we look into and hear from pop psychology and stuff, that it's just, these kids have, behavior disorder, or what's the one that was so funny to me? Um, confrontational, authoritative confrontational disorder, something like that. They have a problem with authority or something. And it's like it's not just a behavioral matter here that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about these four universes that are intimately connected, and one affects the other, affects the other, affects the other. And that's why, as independent Scientologists, having this conversation, I think, with you as you're listening to this is so important. What is the spiritual implications of the behaviors that we might be seeing playing out? So all you see is the physical manifestation, but what's going on in the mind?
Right.
What's going on in the spirit?
Mm-hmm.
And as independent Scientologists, that, to me, that needs to be the first question.
Mm-hmm.
Not why is Johnny acting so mean? The first question needs to be, what's going on in the spirit? What's going on in the mind? Oh, I see why he's acting this way. I see why the physical behaviors are showing up this way, because there's some other stuff happening here.
Right. And one of the things that you see with the current generation, the teens to early 20s, even even older than that, is this sense of entitlement, that they're entitled to much more than they should be because they haven't experienced what it is to get a product from the viewpoint in independent Scientology, that a person is rewarded for the good products that they create, and that is exchangeable for money and goods and things like that. And that is something that is endemic in our society currently, is that, you know, people expect to be on the dole or government handouts and things like that, and they're not producing any product. Then they just expect to be taken care of, and we're one step away from a universal income where
UBI, yeah, universal.
people get paid for doing nothing, and that way they're controlled. And we need to take a look at that with our kids and teach them when they're young that you get rewarded for good production. You don't get rewarded for no production or bad production or overt products. Because, I mean, I hate to say this, but kids these days don't get the understanding of exchange, what it is to exchange a product for one or another. And this is part of that contagion of aberration that's been taught in schools, been taught
Right.
in media, is that, it's okay to hustle somebody as long as it makes money, but somebody else is out money because you scammed them. But that's okay because you were the one that ended up with the money, so that's all right. And that's why you see all of
Mm.
this well, I mean, the scams that are going on all the time, whether it's crypto or whether it's on Facebook or this or that. That's a contagion of aberration because it's been made okay. As long as it's a hustle and you're making money, who cares how you made that money?
Well, I think also too, and even going back further than that, I remember my son's little sisters, they're twins, and one day we went to get them dressed for church or school or something like that. We went to go get them dressed, and they after we got them dressed, Emanuela, she goes out and she gets a flower. And it was like right by the front door. So she goes to the side and grabs a flower off the bush. And she comes back in and she hands me this flower. And I said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like this is exactly what I needed." And I put it in my ear, and I said, "Does it look good? You like it?" And she was so elated to give me this flower.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to communicate in that moment that I accept your exchange, right?
Right.
I accept your exchange. I helped you get dressed, helped you tie your shoes and all that stuff. And she was 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever she was. And she comes to give me this flower, and I accept your exchange. Thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed right now. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so I wanted her to know that it was. But I think that how many times has that been just kind of brushed off? Or, we ain't got time for that. Come on, we gotta go. We gotta go to school. We gotta get out of here. How many times has it been brushed off when a child might want to try to offer an exchange because it's natural? It's
Mm-hmm.
the natural beingness of a spirit to have fair exchange because we're inherently good, right? And yet it becomes almost like brushed aside or almost considered like you wasting my life, you wasting my time
Right.
by doing stuff like this. And so this is another reason why when we talk about charity begins at home, when we talk about the contagion of aberration and how it can mess things up for your children and for people around you and so on and so on, these are little things,
Mm-hmm.
but it throws
They add
off
up.
what's the natural beingness of this person
Mm-hmm.
that wants to give this kind of fair exchange.
Right.
And so then later on, now that your child is grown or whatever older, and you can't get nothing out of them. You can't get no fair exchange. You can't. They won't even clean their room. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, how many times has their exchange been knocked off?
Right.
Throughout that experience, that they don't feel like I have to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You
You know.
you have to let them contribute. I mean, when I was a kid, I had chores that I had to do, and that was my contribution to the household. You did too, I'm sure. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had to do chores, and I told my son, I said, "Ain't nothing free." I said, my son had to pay for his room. You want the room? Do you want it? You
Hmm.
got to pay for it.
Right.
And so he had to contribute financially as well.
Hmm.
And I wanted him to understand that as you maturing, as you growing up, it's going to be extremely important for you to understand how to exchange money.
Hmm.
Like, I didn't play with money. Like, he had to before he got his allowance, he had to give me an invoice before Sunday before midnight. You had to give me your invoice Sunday before midnight. Did you do your chores? Is your homework done? Whatever the report was for the week. Everything needs to be in the invoice. And then at the end of that, when I reviewed it, okay, good, you get paid, and he got paid that following Friday.
Right.
But you had to get it to me by Sunday night.
Right. Because I mean, there has to be an appreciation for the exchange that is occurring, and that's one of the things that's missing in this society is that uh, everybody's on their phone and they're individuated, and they don't know how to communicate because they're on their phone all the time. They haven't even they're afraid to talk to people because the only thing they know is their phone, which is a via for communication.
Mm-hmm. It's not actual communication, right? It's just a via, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, and
Wow.
that's the big problem, is that they don't have a proper communication cycle, so they're disconnected from society. And it's really obvious, especially with the younger generation, that they can't even confront
Right.
having a conversation with an adult. They just clam up because the phone's been the via. So that's another contagion of aberration.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. You know, we'll say, look at me when when we're talking. Look at me when we're talking, like TR0, like confront. You
Right.
know, look at me when we're talking. You know, don't be in your phone, or don't be. You know, I can't because I just I think better. I've heard people say that. I think better when I don't look at you.
Right.
What they got to do with it?
And that is a contagion of aberration in the society, is that
Yes.
I can't look you in the eyes, and I have to look down, and I have to mutter, and I can't talk directly. And this is the dwindling spiral that we're finding ourselves on, is because of all of this aberration that's gone out there, and all of these I have this disorder and I have that disorder, and they can no longer function because they have an acceptable truth that allows them and gives them a pass, instead of being able to do what it is that they need to do, and blaming it on something else, and not taking any responsibility for what it is that they should be taking responsibility for. And it's made okay by the psychologists, psychiatrists, the medical community, and all of that, down to where you have restless leg syndrome.
Yeah. I've met many people with it.
Yeah. So, the contagion of aberration, like you said, it affects these other universes. And in the Scientology axioms, Ellery talks about, you know, there are the primary, above the ones that you mentioned, are your universe, my universe, and the agreed upon universe. And you have
Yes.
so much agreement on this is what everybody is seeing, especially in social media. It's got millions and millions of views, and wow, it must be the truth because it's on YouTube or it's on TikTok or whatever, and all of these people are looking at it, and you're getting these responses and communication about it. And if you read some of the comments, it doesn't take you very long to look at how aberrated the people that are commenting are, and they're validating
That are
they're
watching it.
validating bad behavior. And it's
Hmm.
okay. It's been made okay, and that is the agreed upon universe. As well, gosh, smartphones have only been around since about 2006 in their early versions. Before that, all you had was what you saw in advertising in media. Now you have this portal of agreement that causes things to slide and domino that much faster, because there's so many people seeing the same thing that's being made okay.
Right.
And that's a big problem.
Yeah. And I think that when we look at your universe, the other person's universe, and the agreed upon universe, when we look at it from that perspective, it's like, if I'm a part of the agreed upon universe, what is my contribution to that? Right? Like,
Mhm.
what is my contribution to the agreed upon universe? One of the things that I enjoy doing, I enjoy like sitting down and eating together as a family. That's really important to me. And so wherever I
Very good
am in
point.
those spaces, yeah, wherever I am in that spaces, I want to make that's my universe, and that's my own personal universe, and other people can have their own universe too, but I try to make that be a contribution to the agreed upon universe at some level, on some way. Like, let's sit down and eat as a family, let's make
Mhm.
this a real thing, and let's agree that this has value, even if it's just because I value it. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
let's agree that it has value, and let's sit down and have a meal. I'm not saying every moment, every day, every time, but it feels good to me to be able to do that. And might it feel good to you? Might we come into agreement that this is the case? How many of us have that in 2025? You know what I mean? How many of us have it that do we sit down and eat dinner together as a family anymore?
Right. Well, you did that
You know,
when you were here. We all sat down as a unit,
that's my point.
students, trainees, and all that stuff, and we sat down, and this allows you, and it's your phones go somewhere else. Don't be looking at your phone when we're at the table, whether it's at home or
That's
we're
right.
out. Those phones do not come up above that table when we are out eating, because this is when we break bread and we communicate and we look each other in the eye, and we
And
have
talk.
and talk, for God's sakes, instead of talking to somebody else on the other end of a phone. That's
Right.
what needs to happen, and that's how you create charity at home, by having
Mm-hmm.
time to talk to each other. As long as there's no evaluation, no invalidation, everybody is sharing their viewpoints and opinions. How was your day? Tell me your tales, all that stuff. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And share this stuff. But you see a breakdown on that when you're using a phone, because they're looking to see if they were double blue ticked or not on WhatsApp. Did they see what I said?
Mm-hmm.
And did they acknowledge and all of that? I mean, the communication cycle is extremely important, as is, the auditor's code thing that I just mentioned about evaluation and validation. But you've got to be able to grant your kids' beingness, your friends' beingness. And I mean, let's just face it, it is downright disrespectful when you're sitting at a table with somebody else or somebody else's, and they sit there and grab their phone and look at their phone while you're eating with them.
And never talk and never acknowledge you, never talk to you, never. It's just a weird, it's a weird thing in today's society that that's the case. And let me be clear, I'm 43 years old, so I'm not like super old. but I wanted to be clear that it's more, to me, it's more about the value of the moment versus the mechanism of it, right? And I think,
Mhm.
as I was talking about the four universes that LRH talks about, if you look at it from a physical universe, matter, energy, space, and time moment, and then the bodies being there in that matter, energy, space, and time moment, having dinner, enjoying each other's company on whatever level, what does that do for the second universe, which is the mind? And what does that do for the first universe, which is the spirit?
That's right.
Right? So first universe is spirit, second universe is mind, third universe is physical body, and fourth universe is the physical universe, the matter, energy, space, and time. So all of those universes are there present in that moment, having this experience.
Hmm.
And I think that again, I go deep on it, but I'm saying it from the perspective of when you think about the behaviors of your own behaviors, when you think about the behaviors of others, the people that are around you, your parents, your friends, your whatever, when you think about this, what are you really getting from it? Like, how is this really
Exactly.
impacting you? If it's just, oh, we just chilling, we just having, some wine, or watching TV or whatever, whatever. Okay, cool. But what is really happening across all your universes?
Hmm.
And is this the way you want to uh, be formed up
Hmm.
or informed about who you are becoming and who you are to be? I just think it's important to look at it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's paramount to have your values towards the people in your life, and how you treat them, and that you treat them with respect, and you're not looking at your phone, or distracted or whatever when they're talking to you. You're engaged with them, and you have to grant them beingness and go, okay, this is what's important to me. And that's something that's been lost in this society, is because a phone replaces a live human being,
Hmm.
based off of what, the second most senior particle in the physical universe below admiration is attention. So if you can get attention from however many people on your phone, as opposed to one person sitting in front of you, guess what? You've been counterfeited.
Yeah.
And I think that that's
Yeah.
one of the big
It's not
problems that
real.
we see. It's not real. I can get the attention of millions of people in some cases with, these influencers and stuff like that, and you can just see how aberrated they are because of this misspent, misplaced attention. It's not the kind of attention you want. It's just
Mm.
attention. There's different values of attention. There's just, well, I'm just looking at it because everybody else is looking at it. I'm looking at it because what you say is true. I'm looking at it because you know what you're talking about. I mean, agreement doesn't have to mean that it's true, which goes back to the podcast on lies. Is
That's true.
is what is it that you're taking in from the mass media, the social media, as opposed to what your mom and dad had to say, and you resent your mom and dad because they're telling you what to do or whatever. Well, that's how just how it happens. But you also have to have respect for your parents and dare I say your elders and everything, and you can learn a lot more from an older person than you can a younger person, and you have to understand that and get it across to your kids and follow through and communicate with them and all of that. Otherwise, you're going to have a more aberrated generation. You're going to wonder what the hell happened to these grandkids of mine. Where did they get it from? Oh, wait, they got it from my kids who got it from me,
Mm.
and so on. It just continues forward. So you have to be able to understand the basics of life. And that's what independent Scientology and Dianetics can give you if you just read some of the basic books like New Slant on Life, Fundamentals of Thought, that type of thing.
Well, and this is also, and we did a podcast on this a while back as well, but this is also why, in my opinion, um, why studying as an independent Scientologist has allowed me to develop a greater sense of morality, and I'll use
Mm-hmm.
that word, a greater sense of morality, which in Scientology we call it ethics and so on and so on. But I see the humanity in it. I see the care and the love and the heart of it, because even just the conversation we're having right now, the whole topic of that we're talking about is charity begins at home. Charity is another word. Another word for that is love,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's like if this love isn't displayed at home, if it's not given at home, where would this person go and seek it? Where are they going to seek the love? Where are they going to get the admiration, the attention? Where are they going to get it? They're going somewhere to get it because they didn't get it the right way at home. And
Right.
I'm saying that from not from a judgmental perspective, but more so from a perspective of, if we take a look and evaluate the data, evaluate the facts of what it is that we have here,
Mm-hmm.
you look at it, and I see studying as an independent Scientologist as like, oh wow, I really get the heart of this. This goes back to not just our behaviors, not just, oh, we just sitting down having a breaking bread and eating some meatloaf, not just that. No, no, no. There's a mind back of that. You got it. There's a mind back of that.
Yeah.
There's a spirit that's being impacted here. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't I of course you would get that as platitudes and coming up and respect your elders and da, 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 da. You would get all that kind of stuff
Mm-hmm.
growing up. But when I really start to dive into the mechanisms of it, which is what I gained with studying as an independent Scientologist, when you really get the mechanisms of it, I'm like, oh, that is a big decision to say,
Mm-hmm.
let's sit down and eat together. That is a big decision to go and get auditing so that I don't continue to mess up these other universes. That is a big decision to actually sit down and confront my own shit so that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not then spreading this shit everywhere around everybody that I associate with. It's a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. And the people that I associate with, do I want to associate with people who don't want to be better,
Mm-hmm.
who don't want to get their mind right, who don't want to move from a place of spirit, the first universe, who don't want to move from a place of spirit, who don't want to get their mind right, and their behaviors and their universe displays it. Look at their physical universe. Look at what's around them. Look at their homes. Look at their cars. Look at their life. Look at it. You
Mm-hmm.
can see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
it's
can see it.
it's always palpable. I mean, you can, like LRA says, you can judge people by their mess, and I mean, there are a lot of indicators that can show that. And it also starts off with not from a flow one, others to you, but a flow two, you to others, where
Mm-hmm.
the two rules of happy living are uh basically do it to others that you would want done unto you and be able to experience anything. Don't cause
Right.
effects others can't easily have. And that comes
Right.
down to, is your yard messy? Do you have three cars that are half apart sitting in the front yard, and chickens running around, and all that stuff? You can see this, and these are basics that you learn in independent Scientology. Order versus disorder, uh, the complexity and confronting, we've talked about in a bunch of the podcasts and stuff like that.
Hmm.
There's all these basics that, if you take the time to do that with your children, and make sure that they understand it. Look, don't listen, from the lies podcast. All these simple little datums, you're creating a better future for this planet and for your family and other families. Instead of a contagion of aberration, you've got a contagion of analytical thinking, if you put it there and you take the time to do that with your kids, your friends, and all of that. And that's incredibly important, because values are being chipped away every day on this planet.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it all the time, in the malls and stuff like that. And it blows me away that people do things now that you and I would have never seen in the 80s and 90s. It's unconscionable, the way people treat each other. They don't thank each other. They don't say please. There's no manners. Manners is
Mm.
incredibly important, and it shows respect. And that
Right.
and that's important, that children, adults understand respect and treat each other the way they want to be treated. And that's how we prevent a contagion of aberration, in my opinion, and LRH's opinion as well.
Right. I want to share this because LRH says at the end of this lecture, I'm gonna give you the exact reference. Hold on a second. It's boom, 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 boom. Universes, given 7 April 1959. It's a lecture called Universes, and he says at the end of it, he says, so his condition of body stems from his condition of mind.
Hmm.
And his ability to observe the physical universe stems directly from his own concept, the first universe ability to perceive and create. So your condition of the body stems from the condition of the mind, and his ability to observe the physical universe stems directly from his own concept, the first universe ability to perceive and create. So we're interested basically then in this second universe. We can know this most easily. We can take it apart most readily. And by doing so, we can graduate upstairs to the point of knowingness on the other three universes. So our immediate focus of address is upon the second universe, the universe of the mind. And we'll look that over and see what makes it that way. The way we approach this in independent Scientology, our most immediate focus is the universe of the mind, because your body stems from the conditions of the mind, and your ability to perceive the physical universe is from your ability to perceive and create as a spiritual being. This is how we go at it. And so when we talk about getting in session, when we talk about getting auditing, when we talk about going up the bridge, all we're talking about is, if you looking at your physical universe stuff and be like, this ain't how I wanted this. This ain't how I wanted my body to feel and to look. This is not how I wanted my physical universe, my mess, to feel and look and be. If you want to improve those having this kind of things, let's address the second universe, which is the mind, which then impacts and addresses the first universe as the spirit, as the being. And that's what going up the bridge actually is.
Right.
Ta-da!
Right. And that improves your ability to prevent a contagion of aberration, because as you get better, you will choose better people, and that will propagate out amongst other people, where you have safe spaces, and you can exist and not be in fear of what people are going to say, and low toned evaluations and covert hostility and all of that stuff. But and it's one thing we haven't mentioned is, well, we have in a way, is that you have to have respect for yourself in order to have respect for other people. I think it's a key point, because if you don't respect yourself, how can you respect anybody else? Bro. you're back.
Right. Yeah,
You got all that?
100%. Yeah, that part.
Yeah.
I got the last part. Respect yourself. Hmm.
Right. Yeah, you got to respect yourself. And that's very, very important. And you have to get that across to I mean, if you let people disrespect you, what have you got?
Listen, listen. I'm telling you that for me, and maybe because I'm a Leo rising or whatever, but that for me, like I need that respect and loyalty are two very very important things to me. Especially for me, is respect and loyalty are very important, and so don't do that. Don't
Yeah.
disrespect me.
Yeah. Don't accept the bad behaviors of other people and make it okay.
No, no,
That's
not in
that's
my
a
presence.
yeah, that's a huge thing when it comes to contagion of aberration, because when you do that, things get a lot worse a lot faster. Oh, he accepted that. Oh, okay, I'll treat him that way from now on because he'll let me get away with it.
Yep.
Or
Right.
she, whatever. It and
Right.
that is a huge part of contagion of aberration, is what you make okay and what you will not stand for.
Right.
So I hope this has been helpful to our listeners, and it's a little bit of a different subject matter than we normally talk about, but it needs to be said, and it's food for thought, both as a parent and as a friend and as a significant other. That this contagion of aberration does not have to be continued, and you can fix it through training and auditing in independent Scientology.
Well, I was going to end off by saying that very point that you know studying and being on course and getting the tech in, it's a protection. It
Mm-hmm.
really is a protection. Um, increasing and expanding your knowingness, was the KRC triangle: knowledge, responsibility, control,
Mm-hmm.
is power. And so it's by by increasing your knowingness, by getting on course, by studying, by getting in session and improving in your responsibility and increasing your responsibility on how you handle things and what you're able to handle in life, it's a protection, man.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, protect yourself.
Yeah.
Protect yourself. And with this kind of tech, you have I would call it an ultimate protection from the stuff that really can mess you up,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can
Mm-hmm.
really mess you up, from suppressives to PTS, whatever, potential trouble sources, to all this other stuff, like stuff that can really mess you up. If you know what you're doing and you know how to apply it and you do apply it, you are protected.
Right.
Period.
If you understand it, you can't be the adverse effect of it.
There you go. There you go. So
So for all of our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and we will see you next week. For Quentin and myself, namaste, and we love you. Bye bye.
he's